Do you guys still have dinner or eat with your family and watch television with your family? Today we're going to talk about exactly that, family traditions and how they move along generations, and what we did, what I do differently with my parents versus what he did with his family and his parents. Today, as usual, I am joined by my dad.
I am your father.
There we go. And I'm going to be your host as always. I'm Gabe Chavarria Soda. My dad is Albert Chavarria Jimenez. And as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about family traditions. Now, this is something that came to my head. Well, it's also in the Excel sheet that me and my dad have with a few ideas. But seeing as it's Christmas time and it's New Year's and all our families coming down to visit us, I decided that would be a good thing to talk about, seeing as it's very to do with this time of year. Do you have anything to say? Yeah, it's very traditional, exactly. Do you have anything to say before we get started?
I'm eager to get started. Just actually a quick reminder to all our viewers. These podcasts tend to be quite lengthy, at least an hour long each. So what we do is we break them down into little bits. So if you don't feel like watching or listening to the whole podcast, which would I totally understand if you don't, every day or every couple of days we release little tiny bits, like maybe 3-4 minutes excerpts that you can look out for. So look out for those and watch those, because they will give you an idea of what we're talking about, and you don't have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah,
Apart from
and
that,
they're very
let's
interesting
go.
as well.
They are very
Well,
interesting.
Let's get cracking with it. So obviously, my upbringing and your upbringing, as we've gone through in countless other episodes, has been quite different. You grew up in a very religious family, whereas I didn't grow up in a religious family at all, and religion wasn't imposed on me at all. So I feel like there could be some traditions that are more or less the same and have stayed similar, whereas others that are drastically different.
Yeah.
Do you remember any traditions when you were growing up that your family did?
Yes. We had, well, as you say, because we're Catholics, the Catholics are very, very, very big into traditions. That's what keeps them together. That's what keeps them together as a religion. So we had millions, and of course they're all related to our religion. What can I say? For instance, the first one that comes to mind is a very Catholic and Christian tradition of going to church on Sundays.
Yeah.
Right? That was the one thing that I had that you've never had. Have you ever been to church?
To pray? No.
You've been to church, obviously, for funerals?
For funerals, for weddings.
For weddings, right?
Um,
So you've been to a ceremony, right? To a religious ceremony.
Well, I've been in a place where we were all praying. It's during the Semana Santa, which is Easter.
Right. There's another tradition.
Yeah, that I do that you guys don't do. But anyways, I've started.
So yeah, I mean, we proved that was the one thing which I suppose is good about religion, is that because it brings people together through tradition, it's good, right? So that's what religion does. It creates traditions to be able to bring people together, and I suppose that's good. It creates a sense of community. Going to church, I remember, not necessarily fondly. I think any child that goes to church will say how boring it absolutely is. They try to teach you that going to church is supposed to be a moment between you and God, but obviously it's not, because there's 100 people in that church, and there's some dude dressed in a gown that's talking to you, that you're supposed to believe is the voice of God at that moment. For a child, that's quite hard to understand or to feel or to believe. So I remember my going to church when I was a smaller child. It was kind of I'm not going to say exciting, but it was something kind of cool, getting ready for church, hopping in the car and then going to the church in question, or not hopping to the car, depending on where we lived. We were close or further away from the church. And that little tiny journey was kind of cool. But once I was in church, I was just bored shitless. I mean, it was just listening to this guy talking and saying prayers that I knew by heart. So he just said, you mumble them, getting on your knees, getting back up. And then the most tremendously horrible point during any Sunday service is the sermon, the homily that the the priest says every single Sunday, in which they normally summarize or they read the scripture out and then they talk about what they've just read, right? And then invariably somewhere in between they ask for money. So that's the first tradition that comes to mind, Sunday church. Now that we're approaching the Christmas period, there was a tradition on Christmas Eve to go to church at midnight for the Christmas Mass.
Really? Did you do that?
Yeah, we did. We did every single year. We would have our Christmas meal, and we'd all stay up and get dressed in our best clothes to go to midnight Mass, and that was tremendous.
Yeah,
because, it's when you're a kid, you just want to go to bed, and you don't want to stay up.
Yeah, definitely. So do you obviously that's one of the main. I presume the other tradition in mind is obviously praying every night and doing the prayers and stuff like. Yeah, that's probably on the top of your head. Is there any non-religious traditions that you and your family had?
Yes, we used to have. Yeah, we used to be. We were a very traditional family. From the 80s till all the way till we all left home. So we used to have all our meals together.
Yeah.
We all used to watch TV together. So back in the day when there was only 3 channels here in Spain, so we used to choose whatever came up. We used to traditionally we'd have dinner together. And after dinner, after washing the dishes, which was also practically a tradition, when we were teenagers, we would take turns to help out washing the dishes. That the traditional was not just cleaning the dishes, but also fighting as to who had to do the dishes and who didn't want to do them and whose turn it was, etc.
Yeah.
And then after that, we'd all gather in the living room, in the sitting room, to watch whatever it was, normally the news first. The news bulletin came on, and then whatever there was normally some sort of show or sitcom or a game show or something that came on. We all used to watch that.
Yeah.
Together. Normally, I admit I was normally the first one to leave. I'd go to my bedroom. It was the one time that I had the bedroom to myself.
Yeah.
Because I was shared bedroom with my brother. So my own little tradition was to sneak out and go to the bedroom to grab, when I was young, to grab my tennis racket and pretend I was a rock star. And I'd put on any Kiss or AC/DC song and pretend I was a rock star with my tennis racket. And then when I was a little bit older and I did have some sort of guitar, then I would sneak out and play my guitar on my own.
That sounds very much like you. I can imagine you doing that.
Yeah, I always need my alone time.
And in general, obviously, you've already said that you hated the going to church and that tradition, which I knew you were going to. You've told me before that you hated that. But what about everything else? What about everything else that you mentioned? Do you have? Do you remember liking that or not liking that, or just kind of being like, well, it is what it is?
No, I liked it. I was, we were always a very close family, and we were, when we were kids, it was very comforting to be laying around and sitting around in the sitting room watching whatever it was that we were watching, the programs. I like that. I did. Later on when I was older and I can't really remember any particular traditions that we might have had that stuck. You might consider things that sometimes daily routines end up being traditions, right?
Yeah.
You might say, okay, I brush my teeth every day. Is that a tradition or is that a routine? Okay. And you do things in a very, very specific order that actually becomes a family tradition.
Yeah.
I remember very distinctly when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old. We used to live. The house we lived in had a bathroom just down the corridor, and I was always the first one to wake up to go to school, and I would immediately get up and have a shower, and I would have a shower, and then because I shared rooms with my brother, once I had the shower, I would not turn the shower off. I would leave the shower on, And while I got dressed, my brother would get up and hop directly into the same hot shower. The reason I left it on was because if I turned it off, my brother would go back to sleep. By leaving the shower on, he felt the guilty thing of, the water's running and getting wasted, so he would get up. That was kind of cool. So it was a routine that ended up being a tradition.
That's quite amusing. I never knew that. You never told me that before.
Nor did I. I totally forgot until now. If you want to know the truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess in a way, this podcast is also becoming a tradition, isn't it? Because we do it every week.
Exactly.
Once a week at more or less the same time, give or take half an hour.
Totally.
So,
for me, it's become not a routine, but it's become a tradition, and it's a personal journey to be with you and to get to know you a little bit better, to talk to you every week, to see you from far away.
Yeah.
And to have conversations that we never ever ever would have, because when we're together, our life is just too busy. You got your things to do, and I got my things to do. So for me, this is
acting. Well, yeah.
This is as a parent, this is like the best tradition I could ever have.
Yeah.
And if we're still doing this when you're 30, then by then it won't be a routine. By then it really will be a tradition.
Yeah, it really would be. That's what 10 years away. Oh, 10 years away. Oof, anyways.
Yeah.
That's anyways. You're acting as if we don't talk when we're actually around each other, but we do sit down and talk, obviously not as much as we do here, but also here we have specific topics that we talk about for about an hour, so in the end we go in more in depth than when we're just chatting and just talking and just hanging around. Are there any traditions that you had when you were a kid that you wish you kept for our family? Oof, that was hard for me to say. I don't know why.
Not really, not that I can think of. The ones that we all like, we pretty much kept. And those are the typical ones, having dinner together and and things like that. I can't really. The thing is that my tradition was so my family was so religious that all our traditions were ingrained. Were ingrained about religion. Some things that we'd pray after. I didn't tell you that before we went to have. Sometimes before dinner, sometimes before we retired to watch TV, we all got together to pray.
Mm-hmm.
Right now we prayed the rosary, which was very tedious. It was like a 15-minute, 20 litany of 15 or 20 minutes litany of prayers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also excruciatingly boring. And we never did that with you, right? So all our traditions were like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course the religious ones, Christmas, New Year's and all that, same as everybody else. We kept traditions that we never did with you that I don't particularly wish we kept, is the Fridays vigil, only eating fish, not eating meat on Fridays, that kind of thing.
What's that?
No, that's Christians do that. They don't eat meat on Fridays.
Really? I didn't know that.
And of course, the best one of all is not working on Sundays.
Yeah, that's true.
I like to keep that one forever and maybe extend it to Mondays and Tuesdays as well. But no, I can't think of any traditions that we used to have that I wish we could have kept alive. Yeah, not really.
Because I was while coming up with these questions and thinking about these questions, I was also at the same time thinking about what traditions do we have as a family. Right. I got down thinking we actually have quite a few, don't we?
I think so, yeah.
Obviously, we have dinner together we have most of the meals together apart from breakfast, because normally I either wake up later because you guys wake up at like 6 in the morning, which I'm not going to do on a Saturday and
5.
Sunday.
5.
Well, 5, even worse. I'm not going to do that on a Saturday and Sunday. Forget a normal weekday when I don't have to. But anyways, so we have breakfast separately, but lunch and dinner, if we're in the same house, we almost always
we do
have it together, don't we?
Mm-hmm. We do.
But not only that, we also have, for example, we have a similar thing to the Christians on Fridays, but we just have burgers.
That's true. Which,
for me personally, that's my favorite tradition that I think we have, or one of my favorite, because if you guys, well, obviously most of you guys have never had one of my parents' burgers, but my dad's, not my parents, sorry, my dad's burgers. But if you ever have the chance, don't say no. You should definitely have it.
You're all invited to my burgers.
They're incredible. Yeah. And I say that because there's 3 of us, you guys watching, and there are people that we all know, so it's it's fine. But yeah, and also I was also thinking, I was like, what traditions did we have that we've kind of stopped doing? And I could only really think of of 2.5, I'll say, because
Right,
one of them you guys still do, but I'm just not there anymore, so I can't do it with you guys. And that's going camping or to how do you say casa rural in English?
That's an Airbnb home or whatever. Yeah,
A country house, a country house that we rent. Normally we do that around like once or twice a year. Depends on the year with obviously me and my parents and Fred and Jess and their children and Nick and Dede and his children if they're there. And we used to do that quite a bit, especially the camping, but now that you guys are getting older and not as prone to sleeping on the ground with air mattresses, you prefer beds, so you guys go to country houses now?
Well, yeah. Well, it's not really that. We just got it's all Nikki's fault. Gotta blame it on Nikki, because before we all used to go when you were kids, we all used to go, we all camp. We don't really sleep on the floor. We do glamping, right? So we sleep on mattresses on the floor.
Yeah, that's right. Air mattresses.
At that time we had 4 dogs, but then Nikki decided to get 3 dogs. So now we're traveling with 7 dogs. And to be honest, camping with 7 dogs in a camping ground, because at the end became a little bit way too stressful. Yeah. So we kind of stopped doing that. Then you guys grew up as well, so you guys aren't really that much into the camping experience anymore, like it used to be.
I still really enjoy it.
Yeah. So, but basically, in the last few years, we do end up going to a house with a pool, which is just as good. And like you said, more comfy. It's not half bad as well. It's more expensive, but it's not half bad. I mean, we have such beautiful countrysides and such beautiful places here in Andalusia that it's, if we all get together, it's hard to say no to a nice country house.
I get a bit, I don't want to say sour, but I get a bit sour because I love going with you guys, and you guys always end up going whenever I'm not there.
And last time you came.
Yeah, that is true. Last time I came, but it was a bit of a fluke that I was able to go. But true, I did go, and I really enjoyed it. It was really good.
Well, dude, and hopefully don't live in Ireland. Come back to Spain. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Come back home, my child.
If the wages weren't so crappy there, then I would just go back.
What wages? You got to work first.
Well, exactly.
Coming up in a future podcast, Gabe's quest for a job.
That's next semester. We still have quite a few episodes before that. Yeah. Well, actually, not really. Well, yeah, anyways.
Not really. But anyway, that is a good tradition. I hadn't thought of it as a tradition. It is something that we invariably do every year.
And one thing that we also, I'll say 2 more things, and we can go in quickly. I'll say them quickly, and then we can go in depth on them. Is the first one is every 1st of January, me and my dad used to go to the beach and swim I say swim. I would kind of just run in and run back out because it'd be too cold in the sea, because obviously, as you know, Malaga is right next to the sea. It's a coastal city. So that's what we do every 1st of December. It was absolutely freezing. So I think that's kind of why we stopped. Or maybe because one year we couldn't because of whatever. Yeah,
I think it was just the weather was just too bad. It was really rainy or something. We just didn't do it, and then after that we just didn't do it again.
Yeah, then I think we just forgot about it the next year.
Yeah, well, that was a kind of cool tradition. Yeah.
Yeah, we should try to do it again this year.
Okay.
if I'm awake, because I don't know if. Anyways, yeah, and then the second one is every Christmas. Our meal would be the same. It would be a very Danish meal, and I was wondering why it changed, and I think it's because Grandma left, basically, or my mum got a bit tired. But what we would have was duck breast, caramelized potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
What else did we have?
Risalemang, which is the Danish rice pudding
Yeah, it's true.
with
And
cream.
the pear, the cooked pears with
That's right.
jam as well.
Yeah,
It was
pears
delicious.
pears and wine with the jam, and then for dessert, I would always make a Yule log.
YOLO,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
But as most things, it was very taxing and very stressful for my mum. So I
No,
think
well, you know
one
what?
year,
It's funny that you said that because we never actually set out to make that meal ever. It was always the conversation always veered towards, come November or October or whatever,
Mhm.
the conversation always veered towards, once it was pretty sure that we would organize Christmas Eve, which we normally do. The question was, what should we make? But ultimately, because Grandma was at home, it was always Grandma that said, "I want duck," and you always like your duck, so
I loved it.
it was
I
always
loved
a winner. So we just had the duck, and to be honest, because we did it so many times, it wasn't really that stressful for Mom to make it. So, and what do you think of those traditions? Do you like them? Do you miss them? Do you remember them with fondness? Do you?
I remember them with fondness. I remember the jumping in the sea on the 1st of January. I remember it being very cold, and maybe the 5 minutes after being in the water not being very happy because I was freezing cold.
Dude, do you remember the coldest time ever? Speaking of, that's mixing two traditions, mixing that one with the one New Year's we spent in the mountains, and because obviously there's no sea in the mountains, but there was the river.
Yeah, there was a river.
And oh my God, I will never forget that day. That was
freezing
so cold. I mean, that was literally, water coming down from the freezing mountains, and it was like maybe 1 degree. Oh man. I'll never forget that one. But it was fun, yeah.
I was quite small when we went in there, but I still remember that was absolutely freezing cold.
You were quite small, and you were just blue. I mean, you turned blue straight away. We felt quite guilty. We thought you were gonna die. You were so happy jumping in, and when you came in, your face was like And when you came out of the water, you were just like shivering.
In the hot shower afterwards when we go back to the house. But yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember all of these traditions in it with fondness,
I can tell you one tradition that we lost. Sorry.
Which one?
That we lost that I used to really enjoy, but we lost it just because we changed our routine and you
I know which one you're going to say.
Which one? Guess
Walking to school in the morning.
That one.
Okay.
That one was, but even before that, the first thing we did for quite a while, for a couple of years at least, we did first thing in the morning. While you had your breakfast, we used to play Minecraft together in the sitting room. You used to play on the computer on the TV, and I used to sit behind you with my laptop, and we used to play Minecraft with the realm that we both shared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I used to really enjoy that. I used to really like that. It was a great way to start the day. And then we would walk to school together, you, me, and Mommy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also great. It was only a small walk. It was only a short 10-minute walk, but it was great. You'd be walking around back then, lost in your world of Star Wars and shooting your clone troopers or what have you.
Yeah. I was playing a new game every single day back then.
That's another example of our routine that turned into tradition.
Yeah, it's true.
And now when I remember it not as a routine, but as the tradition of playing Minecraft and walking to school.
Mm-hmm. Well, walking to school kind of it stopped when we moved further away, and I grew older, and I was like, guys, I don't want to wake up at 6 anymore to walk to school. Can I just take the train? Because it was just a train.
For all of you out there, the tradition I'm talking about, we're playing Minecraft and then walking to school. That's when we lived literally, 500 meters away from school, and it was a 5-minute walk.
Yeah.
After that, we moved further away. We moved 2.5 kilometers away from school, and we used to talk a long way around so we could walk the dogs. And that turned from a 10-minute walk to an 1.5-hour walk every morning.
Yeah, which I did for quite a while, but then I got old enough.
Yeah. You did.
For me, it wasn't the walking thing that turned me off. It was waking up so early, that turned me off a bit.
Yeah, of course.
Was-
You eventually grew up. You were a teenager. You ended up in secondary school. Your friends started taking the train
Yeah.
as well, so you ended up doing that. It's perfectly normal. What I remember, that second part of our tradition, the long walk. What I remember fondly is that that's where you and I started, and I guess you and Mummy as well, started getting properly developing our relationship, because we used to talk a lot, not necessarily about deep stuff or anything, but we used to spend all that walk talking, and we used to talk a lot about your routine, about your friends, about what was going on in school.
Yeah.
You'd ask me questions, you'd ask Mummy questions. And that's what I remember fondly. It was the beginning of our bond as a father son that we still have to this day.
Yeah.
And I love you, bro. I love you, man. And I think that's great. I mean, we're laughing about it, but I think there's a lot of people out there that wish they had that kind of relationship with their child and with their parents or with their children. And in our case, it happened pretty, I guess, by accident, really, because we had to walk to school. We had to walk the dogs. Basically, the reason we walked to school is because we had to walk the dogs in the morning and give them their exercise. So might as well just walk to school. And I think that was just a great way to get together and have a little chat every morning. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't have a bad memory of it. I do, obviously I do remember some days where I was like, I just want to stay in bed right now. I don't want to wake up and walk to school.
But yeah.
I think that was more the time than the.
Yeah, we didn't always talk. When you were grumpy, you were a real grumps, and you were a pain in the ass. Mr. Monotone monologue. Yes. No. But anyway, that was kind of endearing. I think that's if you want to define tradition, I guess that's what for me the perfect definition of a tradition is something that creates some sort of bond between people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect way to explain it. And our little morning walks were exactly that.
Yeah.
And now our podcast.
Yeah, of course. And also, I think we're forgetting the biggest thing is that, well, we kind of just mentioned it, but we didn't talk in deep, is that we have dinner and lunch every single day when I'm there and the three of us are there. We have the three of us together. Yeah. Whether that's outside on the terrace or inside on the coffee table.
Yeah.
And we also normally end up watching something at the same time as we eat, don't we?
I was just thinking about that. That's for a lot of people that's not a good thing. Right? A lot of traditionalists would say, well, if you're going to have dinner together, look at each other and talk. But what's cool about our lunches and dinners together is that we do have the TV on. We always watch something that all three of us enjoy. But if you notice, very often we have it on pause. You might come in, we decide to watch whatever. Say if it's Stranger Things is on, we watch an episode of Stranger Things. I prepare it, I pause it while we serve dinner, and then we forget that it's there. We just start talking, and before you know it, we haven't pressed play because we're just shooting the breeze about something. That happens more now that you're away. We have more to talk about. And that's a tradition that's changed because we have traditions that we've lost, and traditions that have changed because of the modern world we live in. Right? Back in the day when my parents were around, it was unthinkable that we would have the TV on while we were having dinner. Yeah. Mostly because there was only one TV in the house, and that was in the sitting room. We used to normally have dinner either in the kitchen, or if the house was big enough, in a separate dining room. There was no TV, so you couldn't even, if you tried, have a TV on. Yeah. Nowadays, people have either TV dinners literally in the sofa, or it's an open plan kitchen, and there's always a TV around or a device around, and people are either looking at their own devices or watching TV. Yeah. I don't really think it's a bad thing. I think it's just a sign of the times, right?
Me neither. I don't think it's a bad thing. And honestly, it depends, but I don't see it as too much of a bad thing. And also, I have to say that we only really sit down and put something on to watch for dinner. For lunch, it is normally we purposely sit down. We don't even turn on the TV.
Yeah. For lunch, we never turn on the TV. There's nothing to watch.
And then we just talk. But yeah, you're completely right in this. With what you said of the that normally we turn on the TV, but we don't end up really watching the video that we chose or the series or whatever. And also we say this, but we literally spend maybe like 5-10 minutes before dinner deciding what to choose. We have a discussion like watch, this video, that video. So it's a whole 10-minute process for it.
That's
to
true.
Not happen.
That is true. Yeah.
Which is quite amusing.
Yeah. And now that I think of it, the preamble to dinner is always a tradition. Maybe this is one that you don't really take part in because you're always you're here with in your room or or either studying or playing with your friends or whatever. But for me and Mom, the cooking is a tradition. It's in fact we do have a very old school approach to it. It's normally it's Mom that makes the meal because she's a much better cook than I am. I'm much more efficient, but I tend to join her in the kitchen, and we have a drink or two while we're cooking if it's a weekend, and we listen to the radio and we talk and we basically fool around and we dance around and I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. It's a great little thing that we have here in the family, and it's a thing that I'm not really sure if this happens in other houses, but I think it should, because food brings people together, and cooking brings people together. And if Definitely. You have a little glass of wine or a beer while you're cooking, and you're listening to good music, there's nothing to stop your feet moving. You're wearing a Muse t-shirt as well, right? What? You're wearing a Muse t-shirt as well. While you're cooking. And it's also a time where Mommy and I, discuss anything that has to be discussed or talk about whatever, talk about our days or whatever. It's a great thing. And we do it all the time, if it's come dinner time, whatever I'm doing, if I'm working or if I'm doing something, I stop what I'm doing, I go to the kitchen, and just sit there with Mommy while she's preparing stuff. I'll help her out while we're talking, and that's a great tradition that I think I would encourage any family to have, because it brings you together.
Yeah, it is a great one, to be honest. And when you became a dad, or when you were growing up, I guess, well, not growing up, but when you were already in your 20s, 30s, and you were already maybe not in the mindset to have kids, but were there any that you said, okay, I'm not going to bring this tradition in, and you're like, well, I might try to push this tradition in just to see, or did you not really think about it until?
No, I don't.
I guess it happened, and they just all our traditions happen naturally.
Yeah, I think so. I can't think of anything in particular. Once we decided to have you, we were too concentrating on trying not to screw up as parents to think of traditions. Before that, because I didn't really think in terms of having a family, because I wasn't prepared. I never really thought. I suppose if somebody would have asked me, I would have maybe come up with something.
Yeah.
But I've never really thought about it, to be honest. I don't think so.
Fair enough. Because I have a feeling that obviously all the religious traditions, apart from the Christmas and the New Year's and stuff, you were going to be opposed to bringing in, obviously, because you weren't going to bring me up as a religious person, so it'd be kind of counterintuitive if you did, wouldn't it?
No, I mean, but there are traditions that everybody has. I mean, here in Spain, if you watch from abroad, here in Spain, New Year's, we all celebrate the New Year's the same way, and the tradition is the grapes. You have 12 grapes when the clock strikes 12. There's one grape for every ringing of the bell. The bell,
Yeah.
like the clock strikes. For every strike, you have one grape.
Yeah, I'm getting
That's a great tradition that I would, if I was in Spain, I would continue. In fact, when I used to live in the UK back in the day, I tried. Normally, I was working on New Year's Day, and New Year's Eve. But whenever I could, I bring it back because I think it's a really cool tradition. You know, having a break.
I agree.
Trying not to choke, having a grape a second. It's a great tradition. That is a really bonding one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And now I've kind of created my own traditions as well. Now that I'm a bit older,
Oh, yeah?
we briefly mentioned during Easter, I take out the throne. I've only kind of done it 2 years in a row, but I'm planning on doing it again next year, and hopefully the years after, because it's something that I do. It's kind of an excuse to come back as well.
Yeah.
In the future. Obviously now I have holidays during then, so I can come back for as long as I want.
Yeah, and that's
holidays.
That's something that you've turned into your tradition, but here in Spain is a legendary, centuries old tradition. The taking out the church thrones, or whatever they're called, the figures of Christ and the Virgin. You know, that happens every single year, and it's a tradition that we can't live without.
And it's been happening for centuries, probably.
Centuries, yeah. Same as the San Fermines up in the north in Pamplona with getting chased by the bulls. You know, those are traditions that, those are mass traditions that you shouldn't change.
Yeah. But I say I created my own because it's something that I do, whereas you guys didn't do. And it's not something that I got from you guys, kind of. It's something that me and my friends decided to do because one of my friends did it. So it's also it's an excuse to do something with them as well, and also it's quite it's quite weird because it's obviously I'm not religious, so it's kind of weird for me to do that because it's a very religious thing, and it's very very I mean it's massively religious. I mean, I'm in a group chat with these guys, and it's crazy. It's not something that I'm used to at all, but I really enjoy it. It's a lot of pain. In my mind, it's kind of like doing a marathon. You know.
Well, it is. Yeah, it must be cathartic in a way. In the same way that I'm running a marathon is when you're running for anywhere between 3 and 4.5 hours straight. You know, your mind focuses, and you end up. You know, it's spiritually is very cleansing, isn't it? Whether you're religious or not.
It's maybe not last year. Last year was quite tough, so I was just kind of in pain the whole time. But the year before that, it was a lot more chill, and it was my first year, and it was
shorter, wasn't it?
It was shorter because it started to rain, so we had to leg it back. But last year was harder. But even so, last year it was still very. It was very cool, and it was very peaceful in a way, even though I was dying.
In pain, Well, I think that's the whole point. If you're a religious person, the idea is that while you're having that suffering, you're mimicking the suffering of Jesus Christ, carrying something on your shoulders, like he carried the cross, and at the same time you're praying for your sins and asking for forgiveness, right? So that's the whole idea of that, the whole religious cleansing through pain, which is, it's not just unique to religion. Like you say, marathons, for instance, right? They're not religious. They're incredibly painful. Another tradition which we have here is a Saturday night.
Oh, it's true.
And I
completely forgot about that.
We've had that for years and years and years, for the last 20-something years, I think.
I was going to say it's decades now.
Not 20, but since Alfredo and Jess came down to Spain, came back to live from the UK, we get together religiously, pun intended here, every single Saturday night or Saturday day, either for lunch or for dinner, and we've been doing it for years. We miss one or two here and there. But Nikki, Fred, The three families get together, and that's a great tradition. Again, a way to bring us together. Otherwise, we'd see each other very sporadically, even though we're neighbors. And it's a great tradition. Absolutely great. It brings us together. We catch up. We talk. We don't talk. We drink. We don't drink. We listen to music. We argue. We don't argue. It's absolutely great. And again, if you have, whenever you have friends that are close, creating those little traditions are what really brings you together.
Yeah, it is. It is. They're absolutely great. I love going to them whenever I'm there and whenever I can. It's something that I've enjoyed thoroughly, especially in the last few years when I've gotten older and I can actually join in the conversations and give my opinions on stuff, because before that I was kind of just a kid, so I didn't really know. I also didn't really care. I just found it boring. I'm talking about the conversations, not the Saturday night in general. But so yeah, but now it's something great, and I can see everyone as well when I go down, and it's amazing.
It's a good one. It's a good one. Right. So that's all about traditions, and really, I guess in a nutshell, that's what a tradition is. Just basically a way of creating some sort of bond between whatever it is, people and nature, animals and people. At least for me, I'm not really sure if that's the official dictionary definition, but the way I see traditions
I completely agree with you.
Are meaningful habits, I guess, is the best definition.
Definitely. So yeah, I think that's a great place to stop it, to be honest. I think we've gone through all our traditions, all of the things we like about them, all the things we don't like about them, even though the ones that we have now, there's not much that we don't like. I think I said that right. But anyways, is anything else you want to say before I sign it off?
Nothing at all. Just if you're watching this and you have traditions that we've missed, just mention them in the comments.
Yeah.
And tell us. I'm curious. I'm curious because there's so many people around the world, so many different traditions that people do. Obviously, all those religious people watching that are listening are probably hating me right now. So I'd like that comment out there. Because obviously it serves different purposes for different people.
Definitely.
And we'd like to hear it. Apart from that, nothing to say.
So thank you everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Next episode, I think it should be next episode, is going to be a really good one. I won't say anything, but we've got a couple of special guests. Our biggest, the biggest group of people in one episode so far. So yeah, like I said, thank you guys very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed. If there's anything you agree or disagree about, let us know down in the comments. Like always, like and subscribe, and we hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next week. Bye bye.